Testifying over Trump, the former head of the FBI is questioned on the president's links with Russia. James Comey claims he was sacked over the investigation and defamed by Trump's team.
By saying that the organization was in disarray, that it was poorly led, that the workforce had lost confidence in its leader. Those were lies, plain and simple.
Also tonight, as new video emerges of the London Bridge attackers, ITV News talks to a former friend of Khurram Butt. Decision day for the UK. The party leaders cast their votes in the general election. And doggy democracy, why people are taking their pets to the polls.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
Good evening. It was the day the former FBI boss finally fought back. In cool, measured tones, James Comey sat before the US Senate and painted a damning picture of the Trump administration. Mr. Comey said the justification of poor leadership given for sacking him was a lie, plain and simple. He also said he had been stunned by President Trump's suggestion that he drop the probe into the links between Russia and the former National Security Advisor, General Flynn. It's a request he insists was made, despite denials by the White House. Our Washington correspondent Robert Moore was watching.
This is not a witch hunt. This is not fake news. It is an effort to protect our country.
This is arguably the most dramatic, certainly the most scrutinised testimony since Watergate. In the hot seat, utterly impassive, his facial expression never shifting as he waited to be sworn in, was the former FBI Director James Comey.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Almost immediately, Comey accused the president of lying and of slandering him and the legendary Bureau.
The administration then chose to defame me and, more importantly, the FBI by saying that the organization was in disarray, that it was poorly led, that the workforce had lost confidence in its leader. Those were lies, plain and simple.
Comey says his meetings with the president were supremely awkward, with Trump demanding his loyalty. So shocking were the requests that as soon as Comey left each encounter, he wrote it up in the form of memos.
And then the nature of the person. I was honestly concerned that he might lie about the nature of our meeting, and so I thought it really important to document. That combination of things I'd never experienced before, but it led me to believe I got to write it down, and I got to write it down in a very detailed way.
We now know that Trump was also requesting, or perhaps demanding, that Comey drop the investigation into National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. But did that amount to obstruction of justice? On that, Comey deferred to the independent investigator, whose work is just beginning.
I don't think it's for me to say whether the conversation I had with the president was an effort to obstruct. I took it as a very disturbing thing, very concerning. But that's a conclusion I'm sure the special counsel will work towards to try and understand what the intention was there and whether that's an offense.
But senators also wanted to know if Comey was so appalled by Trump's pressure, why had he not simply stormed out of the Oval Office?
It's a great question. Maybe if I were stronger, I would have. I was so stunned by the conversation that I just took it in.
Donald J. Trump.
In the last hour, the president has given his first reaction. As always, defiant, portraying his administration as the victim of outside forces.
We're under siege. You understand that. But we will come out bigger and better and stronger than ever. You watch.
I believe the timing of your firing stinks.
This has now become an intensely partisan battle. Democrats see in Comey a chance to fatally weaken the president, while the White House must hope that ordinary Americans view it as no more than an extraordinary political circus.
Well, Robert, as you say, pretty extraordinary, stunning testimony, really, from Comey. How damaging is this, do you think, to President Trump?
Well, it was certainly political box office. Every US network in the country interrupting their daytime schedule and putting out what happened here on the Hill live across the nation. And at times, Mary, you really had to kind of pinch yourself. This was the former FBI director, one of the most respected men in this country, accusing the president of lying, but also of engaging in conduct and behavior that was stunningly inappropriate. The White House defense is simply, look, this was not obstruction of justice. This was Trump being Trump. He was a businessman. He was being transactional. His agenda now moves to the economy and to jobs. Ultimately, this is going to be decided not by what James Comey said here on Capitol Hill, but rather the judgment of Robert Mueller, who is the special investigator and, of course, himself a former FBI director.
OK, Robert Moore in Washington, thank you. Here, a former friend of the London Bridge terror attack ringleader has told ITV News he had given no indication of the atrocity he was about to carry out. In an exclusive interview, the friend said Khurram Butt had been playing with his children in the days before he and his 2 accomplices killed 8 people last Saturday night. Our security editor, Rohit Kachru, has more.
It's 5 days before the killings. The London Bridge attackers are meeting close to a gym in East London, laughing at points. Khurram Butt was their ringleader, and today a new insight from one of his closest friends. His home was raided, though he wasn't arrested.
3 weeks before, I went to his barbecue and then to his house, and there was no sudden change in his behavior. He was fine, he was jolly, he was cracking jokes, he was playful with his children, playful with his son, looking after his daughter. There was nothing unusual to suggest any sort of change in behavior which could lead to a radicalization or extremism.
He described the shock of hearing the news.
I received a call around 8 o'clock in the morning from a friend, and he said, "Have you seen Khurram since last night?" He said there is a rumor that he was involved in last night's attack. My heart just dropped. I was actually in denial. I said, no, impossible, that can't be him. No, impossible, that can't be him. I didn't want to believe it. I actually blew up the image and I paused it and I tilted the phone and it was him. That's when I was gobsmacked. And I was sad, disheartened, upset, but shocked as well.
So what did Butt say to his friends to explain his appearance in the documentary The Jihadi Next Door?
I was shocked, and as soon as I saw his picture on the TV, I called him up straight away. And then I said, "Brother," I said, "do you know that you're on the news?"
But what did he say about the documentary and his appearance in it?
He said that he doesn't want to be in it. He said the reason why he was there, he came out of Regent's Park Masjid, a mosque, and he saw a group of guys there with the camera crew, and the camera crew was also the person who was making the documentary. So he went up to them and he said, "Is everything all right?" He said, "Yes." He said, "Actually, if we can go to the park and pray, and you're more than welcome to join us for the prayer." So he said, "That's fine." So that's what he did.
Today, 3 new arrests were made as part of this growing investigation. Rohit Kachru, ITV News.
The family of an off-duty policeman who was badly injured taking on the London Bridge terrorists with his bare hands said today they were proud of his immense bravery. Another officer from British Transport Police who was stabbed in the eye while armed only with his baton also gave a statement. Sejal Carrier's report opens with footage of armed police ending the attack, and we should warn you, some viewers might find this distressing.
Just seconds after finding the attackers, armed officers had killed all 3 of them, bringing 8 minutes of terror to an end. The fast response of those officers matched by the heroism of others that night. As many were running for their lives, a few brave people ran towards the danger to save others. Among them, PC Charlie Guinegault. He was off duty but confronted the terrorists and is still in hospital. His family said he would do exactly the same if it happened again. Also risking his life, a British Transport Police officer who took on the attackers armed only with a baton. He hasn't been named and is in hospital with serious injuries. But in a statement he said, "I'm so sorry I couldn't do more, and I want you to know I did everything I could." But there were some who could not be saved. These are the 8 lives lost in an attack that lasted as many minutes, among them 3 French nationals. Alexander Picard was one of them. His family described him as a marvellous son. The tributes to all the victims grow by the day at the places where they fell, as people also remember the brave actions of those who saved lives by risking their own. Sejal Karia, ITV News.
The younger brother of the Manchester bomber claims Salman Abedi was radicalised on the internet while living in the UK. According to Libyan officials, the brother said Abedi became a follower of Islamist extremism 2 years before detonating the bomb at the Manchester Arena, which killed 22 people. Officials also claim Abedi, who's of Libyan descent, had acquired bomb-making materials in Britain. Now, across the UK today, people have been voting in the general election, an election which less than 2 months ago no one even knew was happening. All the main party leaders were among those seen to be casting their votes after the polls opened this morning. Polling closes at 10 o'clock this evening, of course, as our political correspondent Libby Vina reports.
There were queues at some polling stations. These were students in Norwich, among those keen to have their say in the general election, the 3rd national poll in as many years. Theresa May, accompanied by her husband, cast her vote near Maidenhead. Afterwards, she looked cheerful, but was giving little away about her hopes for the outcome. Labour's Jeremy Corbyn, voting in a North London primary school, looked optimistic, smiling and pausing to thank those who'd come to record the event. An election that few expected was, he said, good for democracy.
Thank you very much, all of you, for coming here today. It's a day of our democracy. I've just voted.
The Liberal Democrat leader, Tim Farron, braved wind and rain to cast his vote in Kendal.
Welcome to the Lake District.
It was a similar story in Wales, where Plaid Cymru leader Leanne Wood had to battle the elements to get to her polling station. In Scotland, the SNP leader Nicola Sturgeon, who's not standing for Westminster, was casting her vote in Glasgow. Meanwhile, Caroline Lucas, co-leader of the Greens, voted at a polling station in Brighton. The leader of UKIP, Paul Nuttall, was in Cheshire to cast his ballot. The politicians now await the verdict of the people. Whether your polling station was in a pub or a humble porter cabin, every vote counts and will help decide who's returned to Parliament and who will govern. Libby Vina, ITV News, Westminster.
And here on ITV, you can watch live coverage of the events as they unfold all night. Our special election results programme begins at 9:55 tonight, and with Tom Bradby and his team. And that'll take you through the night until the Good Morning Britain team take over at 6 a.m. Then, from 9:25 tomorrow morning, Julie Etchingham will lead another ITV News special with all the reaction and the fallout from the ballot. Still to come on the ITV Evening News, though, tonight, Spain's missing baby scandal. We meet the British mother who believes her daughter was stolen.
So hard.
That special investigation and more after the break. Again, welcome back. A British mother has told ITV News her newborn baby, who for many years she believed had died in a Spanish hospital, may in fact have been stolen by traffickers. An investigation is underway and claims that thousands of babies were taken by a secret network of corrupt officials, including nuns and doctors. Ruth Appleby fears her daughter may have been one of them. Sally Lockwood reports from Spain.
These women have found friendship in terrible suffering. They're two of thousands of women in Spain who were told their babies had died at birth. But it's now suspected they were stolen by baby traffickers.
I've walked in the street and wondered, have I walked past her and not known? It is so hard, because when you're told that your baby's died, they rob you of everything, because nobody looks for a dead baby.
25 years ago, Ruth Appleby was living in northern Spain when she fell pregnant with her first baby. She described the pregnancy as effortless, yet hours after the birth, a nurse told her husband their baby had died. For 19 years, Ruth left flowers at her daughter's grave in this Spanish cemetery, but later discovered the remains inside were not that of a newborn. There were early warning signs at the hospital at the time of birth that now make sense, as Ruth recalls what one nurse said about her to another mother.
A nurse came in and she was quite grumpy, and she turned to her and said, "If you don't rest more, your baby will die, like this lady's baby is going to die."
When the scandal broke 5 years ago, one story led to thousands of mothers across Spain coming forward with similar disturbing stories. Then there were the children who grew up living a lie. Mercedes' parents confessed to her on their deathbed that she was taken from her biological parents. They only told her after she was diagnosed with a genetic medical condition. I asked if she was angry. Not angry, she says. I felt betrayed.
The practice of removing babies from parents deemed undesirable began under General Franco, but was happening until as recently as the 1990s, when selling babies was a money earner for corrupt officials, medics, even the church. And it's a scandal that continues to haunt Spanish society.
MEPs are now working to uncover the truth, and the Spanish Catholic Church and Ministry of Health have agreed to open their archives.
I'm terrified that the answers will go to the grave with somebody, and then it will be much harder for me to forgive.
Thousands of mothers like Ruth feel this is their last hope. If not to find their children, then at the very least the truth. Sally Lockwood, ITV News, Madrid.
Well, here, a couple fighting to take their gravely ill baby son to America for treatment have lost their appeal to the Supreme Court. The parents of 9-month-old Charlie Gard, who suffers from a rare genetic condition, now have just 24 hours to appeal to the European Court of Human Rights before his life support is turned off. Specialists at Great Ormond Street Hospital say taking him abroad will not work and he should be allowed to die with dignity. Now, this weekend, Britain's summer festival scene swings into action with all the usual mixture of mud, music and, even if you're lucky, some sunshine. But the season also brings with it a darker annual trend, the festival goers who suffer and sometimes even die through drug use. Well, today, public health experts are calling for drug testing kits at festivals to help reduce the risks. Let's get more now from Damon Green.
Christian was a fun-loving 18-year-old who died after taking a pill he thought was ecstasy. It turned out to contain a lethal dose of chemicals he never knew were there, and ever since his mother has campaigned for young people to beware of such drugs.
Young adults, teenagers, if they're in a group and they all throw the money in the hat, they're going to say, "Shall we have a go?" And if they do, you know, it absolutely terrifies me. Terrifies me. I'd hate to think that any parent has to go through what I went through. Any parent.
Since Chris's death, the festival where he fell ill in Cumbria has introduced voluntary testing of drugs. It's one of 2 pilot schemes which have seen scientists analyse pills on the spot. And the charity which runs them says it helps define what the risks really are.
We identified boric acid was being missold as cocaine. We also identified malaria tablets had been ground up and missold as cocaine. And we identified that 100% concrete had been made into ecstasy tablets and was being sold on site. So by identifying that, we could flag up to paramedics if there were going to be any medical emergencies.
Latest figures show a rise in deaths from ecstasy, one of the drugs most commonly used by festival goers, up from 10 7 years ago to 57 in 2015, all linked to an increase in the potency of the drug. But the pilot tests carried out resulted in 18% of users opting not to use their drugs once they knew their actual contents and strength. The Royal Society for Public Health now wants such tests to be standard at big events. Festival goers today agreed.
I think it's a good idea because, I think it's better to test them and know that it's safe than take something in like being fatal.
I think it's a very good idea. I mean,
because if the people are going to do it anyway, you might as well allow them to do it safer.
Yeah. Public health experts say testing can never replace efforts to prevent drug dealing, but if it can help reduce the number of deaths, that would make it worthwhile. Damon Green, ITV News.
And finally, they say, don't they, every dog has his day, and that is true, even on voting day. Scores of them have been accompanying their owners to polling stations up and down the country. Of course, as Neil Connery reports, dogs don't actually get the chance to put their paw prints on ballot papers, much as some might like to.
It's becoming a British tradition. As a nation votes, dogs are doing their democratic duty. An impressive turnout as proud owners post pictures of their pooches at polling stations. For Daniel the Spaniel, election day started early.
I gave him a little piece of cheese just to keep him quiet while I was voting.
Thirsty work for the canine constituency. Dogs from all corners of the UK are determined to have their say. There've even been unscientific exit polls.
Vicky, who are you voting for?
Yeah. Well, if there's two things we do well in this country, it's dogs and democracy. And what we're saying today is if you would like to come and exercise your right to vote, why don't consider bringing your dog with you to exercise them as well.
But beware, the opposition are getting in on the act, as cats have also been popping up. Horses too. This was Flossie showing her support for our first past the post system. And even a rat called Maisie made it. But the dogs are heading for a landslide tonight, although Casper decided at the last minute he was a don't know.
He's crying. I couldn't leave him outside.
But Casper and co may be disappointed. In Downing Street, Larry the cat tweeted today he was going nowhere tomorrow, whatever the result. Neil Connery, ITV News.
And that's all for now. Don't forget to join our very own top dog, Tom Bradby, for the ITV News election programmes from 9:55 tonight. But from me and all the team, have a very good evening. Bye-bye.